The soft hum of Manila's morning rush filled the air, tricycles sputtering, jeepneys honking, vendors shouting the day's first bargains. Amid the chaos, a faint, trembling melody floated through the narrow streets of Quiapo. It was not from a radio or a street performer with a karaoke box. It was from a violin, a weathered, scratched, almost broken instrument held by a boy no older than 15. His name was Elijah Cruz. His mother always said his name meant, "My God is the Lord," but to the people passing by, he was just another boy begging for coins. He wore faded shorts, slippers held by tape, and a shirt that once had color but now only carried the dust of the streets. Still, when Elijah drew the bow across the strings, the sound carried something pure, something that made even the busy pause. He played, "Nearer, my God, to thee." His fingers trembled not from fear but from emotion. Each note was like a whisper to heaven, a prayer in sound. To the listeners, it was hauntingly beautiful. To Elijah, it was the only way he knew how to speak to God. Elijah had learned to play the violin from his late father, Manuel, a former orchestra musician who had once played at Manila Hotel before poverty and illness took his job, and then his life. When Elijah was 10, Manuel had pressed the violin into his hands. "Promise me, Anik," he said weakly, "you'll keep playing, even when no one listens. One day, this music will be your voice." Elijah nodded through tears. He didn't know then that those would be his father's last words. Since that day, he had played every morning and every night. Under the overpass, in front of the church, by the train station, anywhere people might stop for a moment and drop a peso into his can. Each coin was for his mother, Liza, who worked at a laundry shop, her hands always red and cracked from detergent. She never complained, but Elijah knew she barely earned enough for rice and rent. Sometimes, when the city lights flickered on and the world slowed, she would whisper, "Elijah, your father would be so proud. When you play that song, I feel like he's here." Those words kept him going. One late afternoon, as the sun dipped into the gray skyline, Elijah stood by the foot of the Quiapo church, his violin case open before him. People were rushing by, office workers, vendors, students, but no one stopped. Still, he played. He closed his eyes and let his heart speak through the strings. The melody of "Nearer, my God, to thee" rose softly, blending with the sound of the church bells. Then, suddenly, the music was interrupted by a crash. A jeepney had swerved too close to the curb, hitting the small wooden stool where Elijah had placed his coins. The few pesos scattered onto the pavement. The crowd barely noticed. Elijah's lip trembled as he bent to pick up the coins, his violin clutched tightly against his chest. One string had snapped. He looked at the violin, the last memory of his father, and felt his chest tighten. That night, he walked home silently. His mother saw the broken string in his tear-streaked face. "Anik," she whispered, touching his shoulder. "I'll fix it," Elijah said quickly, forcing a smile. "Promise." But inside, he wasn't sure how. The next morning, Elijah woke up before dawn. His mother was already gone, another long shift at the laundry shop. He took the violin and headed for Rizal Park. The park was quiet, the morning dew still fresh on the grass. He sat under the statue of a hero whose gaze seemed to watch over him, and for a moment, he prayed. "Lord, if you're listening, please help me play again. I don't care if I'm poor, I just want to play for you." He didn't notice the man sitting a few benches away, sipping coffee and watching him. The man wore a neat suit, his hair silver but his eyes alive with warmth. His name was Maestro Ramon Velasco, a retired symphony conductor and one of the most respected violin instructors in the country. Ramon had come to the park every morning since his wife passed away. He found comfort in music, but lately, his heart had grown silent, until that morning. He saw Elijah pull the bow, even with a missing string, and begin to play. The boy's technique was rough, but the feeling, it was raw, sincere, divine. When the last note faded, Ramon approached him. "Where did you learn to play like that, Hio?" Elijah looked up, startled. "My papa taught me. He used to play for big people in hotels." Ramon smiled gently. "I can hear him in your music." Elijah blushed and looked down. "I can't play well anymore. One string's broken." Ramon kneeled, inspecting the violin. "Old, but not hopeless. Come with me." That single encounter changed Elijah's life. Ramon brought him to a small music shop in Intramuros. He bought him new strings, rosin, and a case. When Elijah tried to refuse, Ramon raised a hand. Consider it a gift. I see something in you, something your father would be proud of. From that day on, Elijah visited Raymond's small apartment every afternoon. The old maestro became his teacher, his mentor, and slowly, the broken boy found purpose again. Ramon taught him discipline, scales, posture, emotion. But more than that, he taught him that music was not about perfection, it was about truth. Every note you play must mean something, Ramon said. When you play, nearer, my God, to thee, don't just play it, pray it. Elijah nodded, remembering his father's words. Months passed. The streets of Manila remained harsh, but Elijah's music began to bloom. One evening, as he practiced outside the park, a foreign woman stopped to listen, tall, blonde, holding a camera. She recorded him silently, tears glistening in her eyes. The next day, she uploaded the video to YouTube with the title, Greater Than, Filipino Street Violinist Plays, Nearer, My God, to Thee, so moving it brought me to tears. Within a week, it had over 3 million views. Comments poured in from around the world. Greater Than, he plays from the soul. I felt God through his music. Who is this boy? Local TV shows began searching for him. One morning, as he practiced with Ramon, a young producer from ABS-CBN approached them. Elijah Cruz, she asked, smiling. We'd like to feature you on Salamat, Sa Musica. Elijah's eyes widened. Me, on TV. Ramon chuckled. You deserve it, Hio. It's time people heard your prayer. The day of the performance came. The studio lights blinded him at first, but when he stepped onto the stage, violin in hand, the world seemed to fade away. He closed his eyes and remembered the streets, his father's words, and his mother's tired hands. Then he began to play. The first notes of Nearer, My God, to Thee, drifted into the air, soft, trembling, alive. The audience fell silent, cameras zoomed in, even the host stopped smiling, moved by the purity of his sound. When the final note faded, there was a moment of stillness, then thunderous applause. Elijah bowed, tears falling freely. Backstage, his mother hugged him tightly. Your father heard you, Anik, she whispered. I know he did. Days later, messages flooded in from abroad. A conservatory in Vienna offered him a scholarship. Christian groups invited him to play in churches across the Philippines. But the most meaningful moment came at Raymond's small apartment. The old maestro was sitting by the window, smiling faintly. I told you, Elijah. Music is prayer. Elijah knelt beside him, tears in his eyes. I couldn't have done it without you, maestro. Ramon chuckled weakly. You already had it, Hio. I just helped you hear your own heart. That night, Ramon passed away peacefully in his sleep, the same night Elijah's video reached 10 million views. At the funeral, Elijah played, Nearer, My God, to Thee, one last time for his teacher. The melody rose above the sobs, floating into the heavens like a farewell. Years later, at a grand concert hall in Vienna, the world watched as Elijah Cruz, now 25, stepped on stage with the Philippine Philharmonic Orchestra. Before playing, he spoke softly into the microphone. This piece was the first song I ever learned. I played it when I had nothing, when my father died, when my mother worked until her hands bled, and when I met a teacher who gave me hope. Today, I play it not for fame, but as a prayer, for all the children in the streets who still believe that God listens. Then, with tears glimmering under the lights, Elijah raised his bow. As he played, Nearer, My God, to Thee, the entire hall fell silent, thousands of people, from different nations, feeling something divine. For a few sacred minutes, time stopped. The music rose higher and higher, like a soul reaching heaven. And somewhere in that eternity of sound, Elijah felt them, his father, his teacher, his mother's prayers, all surrounding him like light. When the final note faded, the audience stood in stunned silence before erupting into applause that shook the hall. Elijah bowed deeply, whispering a final prayer in his heart. Nearer, My God, to Thee, nearer to Thee. That night, under the bright Vienna sky, Elijah walked alone to a small chapel. He placed his violin gently before the altar, lit a candle, and smiled. He no longer needed to beg on the streets. He no longer played for coins. Now, he played for something greater, to bring souls nearer to God. And as the candle flickered, a soft breeze passed through the chapel, like a whisper from heaven saying, Well done, my child.